Hello, I'm Julio Torres, and for this episode of TBLT, I will talk about task-based instruction with heritage language students. I'm currently a professor of Spanish Applied Linguistics and Multilingualism at the University of California, Irvine, where I conduct research on the effects of pedagogical interventions on heritage and second language learners, different issues around multilingualism, cognition, and task-based language learning. And I also have the privilege to work as a teacher educator implementing TBLT approaches with heritage language students. In this meme, we can view the people playing music as a representation of students working together and using the target language to accomplish the goal of a particular task. As you can see, everyone brings something different to the task, since students differ along multiple dimensions. So along these lines, one key question that I have is, what do heritage language students bring to a task? In this presentation, I'll address whether heritage language students can also engage in and benefit from TBLT. In other words, can heritage language students also jam with TBLT? To begin, I would like to show a task that was designed for an advanced business Spanish course that enrolled both second language and heritage language students. This task, which can be downloaded from the TBLT Language Learning Task Bank, the link is here below, asked students to take on the role of business consultant to recommend a candidate for a marketing position at the company Movistar in Spain. The task consisted of two parts. First, students read 6 candidate profiles, 3 of them are here, and they needed to reach a consensus in selecting one candidate to recommend for the position. The second part of the task consisted in students collaborating to write a formal letter to the CEO of the company justifying their choice. So the question is, what happens when heritage language students interact with second language students to reach the goal of a meaning-oriented task such as this one? This is a critical issue because many language courses are what we tend to call mixed classes that enroll both heritage and second language students. So one point to consider is, how do heritage language students differ from second language or additional language learners? So one key difference is that heritage language students will bring some type of prior language experience to the classroom, unlike second language students who tend to come with a blank slate. One other difference is that heritage language students' linguistic knowledge and abilities are going to vary along different dimensions. So no two heritage language students are created alike. And this is due to many different factors, such as type of exposure that they had in their home or in their community to the heritage language, whether or not they had schooling in the country of origin in the heritage language, whether they're interacting in an oral over written mode. We know from the research that heritage language students can often recall or use a target form in oral modality, but not in written modality. And also, research has also documented that individual differences such as motivation, anxiety, can also play a role in helping students develop and access their linguistic knowledge in the heritage language. And one final point is that heritage language students' language use is also shaped by affective and cultural connections to the heritage language. As such, heritage language students are going to bring into the classroom emotional ties with the heritage language, which can be in the form of sometimes insecurities that they may have with the heritage language. So all of these differences are important to consider when we think about teaching heritage language students. So there has research that has begun to document these interactions between heritage and second language students, or heritage and other heritage students, when they are completing meaning-oriented tasks. So I want to share with you 4 key findings that we are observing in these initial studies. So I want to be clear that we need a lot more research to confirm these observations, but this is what we are observing from the few studies we have so far. Number one is that the good news is that the collaborative tasks between heritage and second language students also lead to what we call negotiation of meaning. When, for example, students are asking for clarification during the interaction, and also focus on form episodes when students are engaging in linguistic or meta talk about certain linguistic forms as they're completing a task. These are all good signs because we know that these are all learning opportunities that lead to language development. So the fact that we are observing these episodes is a really good sign that heritage language students have the opportunity to develop their heritage language. The second point is that heritage language students tend to focus primarily on the communicative aspects of the task. And this should not be a surprise to us because heritage language students use the heritage language at home and in their community to engage with different communicative functions, right? So they're not using the heritage language to talk about linguistic forms, for example. However, what we're seeing is that this also can depend on the task condition. So when heritage language students are, for example, engaging in a task through synchronous computer mediated communication, for example, we see that they're more aware of target forms. Okay, and they tend to self-repair and pay more attention to non-target like utterances that they may produce. But this happens when they're engaging in some type of written chat in a synchronous computer mediated communication mode. The third finding is that second language students benefit more from task-based interactions. And we see this because second language students position heritage language students as language experts during these interactions. And therefore, they trigger or they generate many focus on form episodes, which the heritage learners are resolving during these interactions. So therefore, second language students are benefiting a lot from this prior knowledge experience that heritage language students bring to the task. The second piece of evidence is also in questionnaires. When heritage and second language students are asked about their interactions with one another, both groups have reported that second language students are benefiting more. There are a couple exceptions in the research with writing tasks. And the final finding I want to share is that there's some evidence that heritage language students indeed retain knowledge from the focus form episodes as a result of task-based peer interaction. So this is also a good sign. However, I will say the study that we have so far showed that they tend to retain more knowledge when they are interacting with another heritage language student. So that's something that we need to unpack further. So, based on these findings, what are some few classroom applications for us to think about when we are designing task-based lessons with heritage language students and when they're going to be interacting with second language students? So the first thing is to keep in mind their prior language experience, their type of exposure they may have had, the schooling, the modality in which they're interacting, right? We need to keep in mind all of these factors when designing tasks and task-based instruction. The second thing I would like to share, or the second application, is the communicative goals and their community. So conducting some sort of needs analysis or needs assessment might be beneficial to really understand heritage language students' local communicative goals and needs, why and what ways they want to use the heritage language, and also having an understanding of their local linguistic communities. So that's very important to really have an understanding of the prior language experience that they're bringing into the classroom. The third is validation. We ought to create tasks that validate their multilingual experience that gives them an opportunity to showcase their fluid linguistic abilities. And when fluid linguistic abilities and can be mixing two languages, for example, the heritage language with the societal language, and also the variety that they bring from home that many times the variety spoken at home can be different from the variety being taught in the classroom. So we should give space for our heritage language students to showcase and use those linguistics abilities as a way to validate and to build their confidence with the heritage language. And lastly, I will share that we need to think about leveling the playing field. So as we saw from the research, we're seeing that second language students tend to benefit more from task-based peer interactions. We want to think strategically then how to pair second language students and heritage students, or when to pair them together to work on a task. So we should consider different things such as the topic of the task. For example, if the task is to talk about what's missing in a kitchen or items in the kitchen, the heritage language students may not benefit so much from that type of task because perhaps vocabulary associated with the kitchen is something that they know really well from using the heritage language at home. We also should consider the linguistic demands, the type of register that the task demands, and also the modality that keeps coming up in the research. The modality in which they're interacting, or the task modality, is also very important, as heritage language students may benefit more from second language students where they're completing a written task. So I'm going back to our question, can heritage language students also jam? Absolutely yes. Heritage language students can also jam with TBLT, but their multilingual experiences call for intentional task design and differentiating methodology in order to optimize their language learning experience in mixed classrooms. Here are a few recommended resources that I leave for you in case you want to read more about these issues, and a reminder of the link to the TBLT Language Learning Task Bank. Thank you so much for your time.